If you've been online at all in the last couple weeks, you've likely already heard about the Rabbit R1. It's this AI large language model based device that's been kind of captivating the world. And I didn't do a review of it right away because I wanted to sort of let it simmer a little bit, think about it, and sort of let my opinion form fully before I brought it to you. The first thing that stands out about the Rabbit is the design. It has this really cool retro look to it that reminds me of my childhood and growing up in the 80s. I think it's a really cool idea. Using the device is purportedly simple. You press a button on the side and just start talking. There are two microphones at the top of the device that are far field microphones that pick up your voice and bring everything you say into it. There's a 360-degree camera that they're calling the rotational eye that's able to go on both sides of the device, and then an analog scroll wheel as well. The device sells for $199 and claims that there's no subscription required. If you dive into the hardware specs, you'll see a couple interesting things. The processor is an octa-core, so an 8-core processor, and there's 4 gigabytes of onboard memory. So right away we know that they're not able to run the large language model locally on this. With 4 gigabytes of memory, simply not enough to run the OS and everything else on top of that. What this means is that more than likely, all of your queries are being sent over to their cloud compute system somewhere else. That raises a couple questions for me. One, how are they going to scale this? So if there's no subscription and it's a flat $199, all those API calls cost money. And so over time, if they don't have a revenue model that's recurring, they're simply going to run out of cash. Now they've raised about $30 million already. That's going to last a little while, but at some point, you have to have a revenue model that keeps everything running. The device is powered by something they call Rabbit OS. This is where things get a little bit more interesting, I think. So we've all heard of large language models, LLMs. They're using something that they're calling a large action model, a LAM. The large action model, as they say, is a cornerstone of the OS, and it's a new type of foundation model that understands human intentions on computers. It understands what you say and gets things done. The idea here is kind of groundbreaking. Let's think about a couple of interactions we have with voice assistants today. If you're talking to Siri, Google Home, whatever it is, you have to be really precise in the way that you ask it to do something. If you want it to set a reminder, you have to use those exact words in a very specific way, and it's almost robotic. It's essentially you're trying to program something with your voice, and it can be pretty frustrating. Large language models, on the other hand, are really good at understanding what you're trying to say and inferring the meaning behind the words. You can say something a dozen different ways and you'll still get a similar response because it understands what you're trying to say. The missing piece, at least presumably up until now with the large action model, is that you haven't been able to take action based on that input, that inference. If I ask ChatGPT to set a reminder for me, it can't actually do that because it doesn't have access to my phone or my calendar. That's really where the R1 is kind of groundbreaking. What they've done is they've created this action model that's able to connect to all these different types of apps, and it's actually able to take what your spoken words are and convert those into actions that can place within those apps. They sort of lay out how that works on their website. You have this intention layer. This is where it's understanding what you're trying to say, understanding what you're trying to do. Set a reminder, remind me to do something, order me some food, whatever it might be. And then the second step is interfacing with all of those websites and web applications. This is the really groundbreaking part because it doesn't have to have a direct API connection. It doesn't have to have a programmatic connection to the application that you're trying to have it work with. It can presumably, based on what they're claiming, go out onto the web and just kind of figure out how to complete the task. And then finally, it completes the task for you. That's the interaction layer. You can see here, it says these tasks, it completes these tasks for you on virtual environments in our cloud, from basic tasks such as booking a flight or reservation, or complex ones like editing an image in Photoshop. Again, though, that raises my question, how are they paying for all this cloud infrastructure that's able to actually complete the tasks if they don't have a subscription model? They have something called the Rabbit Hole, which is where you manage all of your portals, all of your applications that are connected to the Rabbit. This is where you actually log into things like Spotify or Uber Eats or whatever it might be. You give it permission to access those apps and perform actions on behalf of you. And here's some examples of the apps they say that you can connect now. So music, rideshare, food, map research, reservations, tickets, shopping, generative AI, and travel. And in an experimental way, they have this teaching mode where you can actually teach the model how to perform new tasks, which presumably get shared with everyone else at some point once it has enough training. And then the rabbit learns over time and becomes more impressive. At the time of this recording, they've already sold tens of thousands of units. The first 5 shipments have already been booked out. So this is something that a lot of people seemingly are interested in. And I can see why. It's compelling. This is how voice assistants always should have been. It also raises a couple concerns of mine. What's to stop Apple and everyone else from just doing this natively on the phone? Why couldn't this have been a phone app? We already carry our phones around with us everywhere anyway. And the CEO had an interesting thing to say about that. He said phones have actually become time wasters, not productivity machines. While I tend to agree, I think that's also a personal decision. Do you have social media apps on your phone? Do you sit there and sort of doom scroll through them? I think that's more the applications problem than it is the actual hardware device. I think a phone in and of itself is a fantastic AI inference engine sitting in the palm of your hand that doesn't quite have the software on it yet to do anything really amazing. I also think from that perspective, had the Rabbit launched as an application for an iPhone or Android device, I don't think anyone would have cared. I think it would have been interesting and neat and people would have downloaded and installed it, but I don't think they would have gotten near the publicity that they did had they not had this really cool design and form factor that they came out with. It's designed by Teenage Engineering, and if you've never seen their products, they're all that really retro cool look to them. The Rabbit also says this isn't a replacement for your phone, and it isn't. It doesn't do things like make phone calls or receive text messages or any of those sort of core foundational pieces that you use your phone for, at least not yet. That means that I'm not only going to have to carry around my phone, but also this other device that's shaped almost like a phone itself too. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough pockets for the future. I can't really be mad about all that though. I think it really takes guts to launch a product like this, especially a physical hardware device, and change the trajectory of voice assistants and how we interact with technology. I think this really is the future, a future in which we don't have to sit here and press buttons and launch apps. I think apps will be largely gone. I think what we're going to end up doing is just using our voice and talking to technology. User interfaces are going to be a thing of the past. The way we interact with data and websites and everything else is going to change dramatically over the next 10 years. While I do have some concerns about the business model, the fact that it's not a subscription, it's a flat fee, I think they run out of money that way long term unless they have something else going on in the back end. I do have an idea there. I think they could generate revenue with affiliate marketing where they actually get a piece or commission for every food order through Uber Eats as an example. But either way, compute is still expensive and $199 only goes so far. There's also that looming threat of we absolutely know that Apple is working hard to make Siri actually useful with a large language model. And as soon as they do that, I think a lot of these features are going to be natively on our phones, especially if this company is successful. But you know what? Maybe that's their end game, is to get acquired by Apple or Google. Either way, the future looks exciting and I can't wait to be a part of it. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, I'm Brian Lovett. This is All Your Tech AI. See you next time.
I'm the virtual prophet in the tech town, breaking down AI, wearing the crown, from basics to complex, never let you down. All your tech AI, earning the renown.